Sierra Dawson didn't expect her Tuesday morning to start with a job interview inside a glass mansion overlooking the Pacific Ocean. She shifted nervously on the smooth marble floor of the entryway, clutching her purse tighter as the door swung open. A little girl with wild chestnut curls and a chocolate-stained mouth peeked up at her. "You're not Mrs. Judy," the girl said, frowning. "Nope," Sierra smiled, crouching to her level. "But I'm Sierra, your new babysitter, I hope." The child blinked, then held out a sticky hand. "I'm Kenzie. I'm 4 3/4. Dad says I'm small, but I'm mighty." Before Sierra could respond, a deep voice echoed from behind her. "She's not wrong." She turned and nearly forgot how to breathe. The man who stepped into the foyer was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair pushed back like he'd just run a frustrated hand through it. His face was sharp, striking, but softened by the warmth in his eyes. He wore a plain white t-shirt and jeans, his feet bare against the marble. But it wasn't his looks that hit her hardest, it was the way he looked at her, like he already knew her. "I'm Zane Owens," he said, holding out his hand. "Kenzie's dad." She shook it, startled by the strength in his grip and the calluses on his fingers. "Sierra Dawson, thank you for having me. Your home is..." "Wow," he chuckled. "It's a little much. We usually stay in the guest house, but Kenzie got spaghetti on the rug, so we're here this week." Sierra blinked. "The guest house?" He gave her a quick tour. There were more bedrooms than she could count, a kitchen that looked like it belonged on a cooking show, and a backyard that felt like a resort. But he kept the tone casual, even joked about not knowing how half the light switches worked. And yet, something about it didn't add up. He said he worked from home, that he was in between projects. But the watch on his wrist wasn't something you wore unless you had at least 6 zeros in your bank account. And the car in the driveway? A sleek black Aston Martin. She knew because her cousin was obsessed with cars. But she didn't ask. If he wanted to pretend he was just another single dad trying to make it work, fine. She was just here to babysit. And she needed the job. "Kenzie naps from 1 to 3, Zane said, glancing at the clock. "If you're okay to start today, I've got a meeting upstairs." "I'm good," Sierra nodded. "We'll be fine." She watched him disappear up the grand staircase, then turned to Kenzie, who was now trying to feed her doll a grape. "Okay, boss," Sierra grinned. "What's first?" They built a pillow fort in the living room, read 3 books, and made peanut butter and banana sandwiches shaped like stars. Kenzie was sweet, sharp, and had no filter whatsoever. "My dad doesn't like anyone," she said matter-of-factly while chewing. "But I think he likes you." Sierra laughed. "He just met me." Kenzie shrugged. "He said you were pretty before you even got here." Her heart did a weird flip and she quickly changed the subject. By the time Zane came back down, Kenzie was asleep on the couch, curled up in a blanket Sierra had found in a basket by the window. "She fell asleep 10 minutes ago," Sierra whispered, standing. He looked at his daughter, then back at Sierra with something unreadable in his eyes. "She hasn't napped that easily in weeks." Sierra smiled. "She's a good kid." Zane nodded slowly. "You're hired." The next 2 weeks went by fast. Sierra was there every weekday from 9 to 5. Zane worked upstairs or left for meetings, but sometimes he floated into the kitchen while she was making lunch or helped her carry Kenzie's art supplies outside. He always wore those same jeans and t-shirts like he was trying to blend in. But there was something in his posture, the way he carried himself, it screamed power. Control. Still, he made pancakes with Sierra and Kenzie on Fridays and let Kenzie put stickers on his laptop. He even helped Sierra fix her broken car window without a second thought. But what really got her was the way he looked at her when she wasn't paying attention. Like he was trying not to fall. One Thursday afternoon, after Kenzie had gone to bed early with a stomach ache, Sierra found herself alone in the kitchen, rinsing dishes. Zane leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her. "You don't ask a lot of questions," he said quietly. She glanced at him. "You don't give a lot of answers." His mouth quirked. "Fair." There was a beat of silence before he stepped closer. "I like having you here." She turned, heart racing. "Zane, I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable," he added quickly. "I just..." It's been a long time since there was someone in this house who didn't feel like a stranger. Sierra swallowed hard. I like being here. He held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. I'm taking Kenzie to the aquarium Saturday. You should come. Her eyes widened. Like, with you? Yeah, with us. His voice was soft now. Unless you've got plans. She didn't. And when Saturday came, she wore a sundress and met them outside the aquarium gates. Zane wore sunglasses and carried Kenzie on his shoulders. They looked like a family. People even mistook them for one. And Sierra didn't correct them. Afterward, they got ice cream and walked along the boardwalk. Kenzie fell asleep in the car and Zane offered to drive Sierra home. But instead of just dropping her off, he got out and walked her to her door. I had a good time today, he said, hands in his pockets. Me too, she said, barely above a whisper. He stepped closer. I've been trying to ignore this, he said. But I don't want it anymore. Then he kissed her. It wasn't soft. It was real. Warm and a little desperate, like he'd been holding it in too long. When they finally pulled apart, she blinked up at him, breathless. I'm not just your babysitter anymore, am I? No, he said, brushing her hair from her face. You're not. Sierra hadn't stopped thinking about that kiss, not during the restless night that followed, not when she was brushing Kenzie's hair the next morning, not even when she was slicing strawberries in Zane's kitchen on Monday afternoon. But Zane? He hadn't mentioned it once. He hadn't avoided her either. He still passed her coffee in the morning, still asked how she slept, still ruffled Kenzie's curls with the same quiet affection. But the way he kept his distance, careful not to let their hands brush, not to let his eyes linger, it said more than words ever could. By Wednesday, Sierra started to wonder if she'd imagined the whole thing. Then came Thursday. Kenzie was at preschool for a few hours, and Sierra had stayed behind to help sort through some of her old toys. Zane had taken a call in the living room, pacing slowly in front of the windows, voice low but firm. She hadn't meant to listen, but when the name Bayshore Holdings came up, her ears snapped to attention. She knew that name. Everyone who paid rent in this city did. It was the company that owned nearly every luxury apartment complex along the coast. They were known for buying up struggling buildings, renovating them, then hiking the prices beyond recognition. Her cousin had been evicted because of them. Sierra leaned against the kitchen counter, frowning. Zane's voice dropped, and she couldn't make out the rest. When he hung up a few minutes later, he didn't look at her as he passed through the kitchen. But his jaw was tight and his shoulders were tense. Something was wrong. She waited until he poured himself a glass of water before saying anything. Rough call? He hesitated. Something like that. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, she said gently. He looked at her, then really looked at her. Like he was weighing the risk of something. I'm not just some guy working from home, he said finally. I'm the managing partner of Bayshore Holdings. The words landed like a slap. She stared at him. You're the one who owns all those buildings? I don't own them, he replied. Not directly, but I make the calls. I approve the deals. I sign off on the projects. Her mouth went dry. So you're a millionaire? He gave a single nod. Several times over. Sierra stepped back, heart pounding. Why didn't you tell me? Because I liked the way you looked at me, he said quietly. Like I was just a man, not a bank account. Sierra crossed her arms. You lied. I didn't lie, he said. I just didn't correct any assumptions. That's the same thing. No, it's not. His voice rose slightly, then softened. I've had women pretend to like my daughter just to get closer to my wallet. You weren't like that. You showed up when you didn't have to. You sat on the floor with her and made paper crowns even when your knees hurt. You never once asked about my money. I didn't ask, she snapped, because I thought I knew who you were. Zane's expression shifted, the confidence cracking just a little. You do. No, I don't, she said, backing away. I don't know anything. She grabbed her bag and walked out before he could say anything else. The next day, Sierra didn't show up. She texted to say Kenzie had a fever and should rest, but Zane knew better. He recognized the subtext. She needed space. He made a doctor's appointment for Kenzie and stayed home with her. But the house felt different, colder, quieter. Like something vital had been pulled from it. Kenzie noticed too. "Where's Sierra?" she asked from the couch, blanket around her shoulders. "She's taking a day off." "Is she mad at you?" Zane sighed. "Yeah. I think she is." Kenzie frowned. "You should fix it." "I'm trying." "Try harder." Zane smiled despite himself. "I will." That night, after Kenzie fell asleep watching cartoons, he opened his laptop and stared at his inbox. There were 4 new contracts waiting, 3 meeting requests, and a reminder from his assistant about the gala on Saturday. He ignored them all. Instead, he opened a blank email. Then deleted it. He didn't want to explain things over a screen. He needed to see her face, hear her voice, fix this the only way that mattered. By Friday afternoon, he was standing outside her apartment building, hands in his coat pockets, heart hammering like he was 20 again. Sierra opened the door with surprise and immediate wariness. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he said, "but I needed to say this to your face." She didn't invite him in, but she didn't close the door either. He took that as a small miracle. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning," he said. "Not because I owed you my bank statements, but because you were honest with me from day one. And I didn't show you the same respect." Sierra crossed her arms. "Why now?" "Because I'm not ready to lose you." Her breath caught just slightly. "I've spent the last 4 years thinking I'd never have this again," he continued. "A real connection. A woman who sees my daughter, not just my name. And then you walked into my life with your old sneakers and your coffee-stained tote bag, and you made everything feel lighter." She laughed under her breath, shaking her head. "You're good at speeches. I'm not trying to impress you. You're succeeding anyway." He stepped forward. "Let me make it up to you. Come to the gala with me tomorrow night. As my date." Her eyes widened. "A gala?" He nodded. "Black tie. Champagne. Overpriced hors d'oeuvres. You'll hate most of it. But I'll be there beside you the whole time." Sierra hesitated. "What about Kenzie? My sister's flying in to watch her. Just say yes." She stared at him for a long moment, then finally gave a slow nod. "Fine, but I'm not wearing heels." "Deal," he said, his grin breaking through. "I'll pick you up at 7. As he walked back to his car, he didn't care that he had 2 missed calls and a dozen emails waiting. Sierra was giving him another chance, and this time he wasn't going to waste it. When the sleek black car pulled up outside Sierra's apartment the next evening, her breath caught. She hadn't known what to expect, maybe something elegant but understated. Instead, Zane had sent a driver in a Bentley, and as she stepped out of her building, people on the sidewalk slowed to watch. The driver opened the door for her with a respectful nod, and she slid into the plush interior, the leather cool against her back. Zane was already inside, dressed in a charcoal tuxedo with a crisp white shirt and slim black tie. His hair had been combed back with more precision than usual, his jaw clean-shaven, the scent of something expensive and dark clinging to him. When he saw her, his eyes swept over her once, slowly. "You look incredible," he said, voice low. Sierra shifted slightly in her seat, adjusting the strap of her gown. "Thanks. I borrowed it." He tilted his head. "Borrowed? My neighbor's best friend works at a bridal boutique. I'm pretty sure this was meant for someone more important than me." "There's no one more important than you tonight." She looked away, heat rising in her chest, but didn't respond. The gala was held at an art museum downtown. The entire building had been transformed, glass chandeliers suspended in clusters from the high ceilings, soft golden lighting casting a warm glow across the marble floors. Waiters carried trays of champagne and canapes, and the crowd was a sea of black ties and floor-length gowns. Sierra had never been anywhere like it. She stayed close to Zane as they entered, his hand resting lightly against her lower back. People turned to look at them, some with curiosity, others with recognition. Zane greeted a few with polite nods, but he didn't stop to talk. Not until a tall man in a navy tuxedo stepped forward with a practiced smile. "Zane, I wasn't expecting to see you tonight. Thought you'd finally stopped pretending to care about these things. Zane extended a hand. Mason, it's been a while. The man's eyes flicked to Sierra. And who's this? She started to speak, but Zane answered first. This is Sierra Dawson. She's with me. Mason's brows lifted, but he didn't comment. Instead, he offered her a handshake. Pleasure. I'm Mason Drayton. Zane and I used to be on the same board before he decided to cut ties with half of LA. Zane's jaw tightened just slightly. I cut ties with the ones who thought people were numbers. Mason gave a half laugh. Still on that crusade? Zane gave no reply, and Sierra could feel the tension radiating off him. I'm going to find a drink, she said, touching Zane's arm lightly. You okay? His eyes flicked to her, softening a little. Yeah, I'll catch up. She stepped away, weaving through the crowd until she found a small bar tucked beneath a staircase. The bartender handed her a glass of sparkling wine, and she turned to observe the room. The conversations around her buzzed with investment talk, property acquisitions, and names she didn't recognize. She felt like a tourist in someone else's life. A woman approached her, tall and impossibly poised, her gown shimmering like liquid metal. You're with Zane Owens? She asked, her tone polite but edged with something cooler. Sierra hesitated. Yes. I'm sure he didn't mention me. Julia Kent. We dated years ago. Ancient history, really? I'm not sure that's relevant, Sierra said, raising her glass. Julia's smile didn't falter. I just find it fascinating. He used to bring models to these things. Now he's bringing his nanny. Sierra took a slow sip before answering. I'm not his nanny. I'm Kenzie's friend. And his. Julia's expression flickered, then brightened again. Of course. Well, enjoy the evening. These events can be overwhelming. As she walked away, Zane appeared beside Sierra, his jaw set. I saw her talking to you. I should have warned you. About your ex? Sierra said, glancing at him. She's not very subtle. She's good at pretending she still matters, he muttered. Sierra turned to face him fully. I can handle someone like her. I just don't want to be a prop in your world. You're not. Then why do I feel like I'm wearing someone else's shoes? Because this isn't your world, he said quietly. It's mine. And I've spent so long in it I forgot how cold it can be. She studied him, her expression unreadable. Then why stay in it? Because I'm trying to change it. From the inside. He glanced away, voice low. People like Mason and Julia? They've run things for years. I've been slowly buying shares, shifting boards, taking seats away from people who treat families like spreadsheets. Sierra blinked. You never told me that. I didn't think it mattered to you. It does. Especially now. He met her eyes, and something in his gaze shifted. Let's get out of here. She hesitated. We just got here. I've seen enough. And I want to show you something. They left through a side entrance, Zane's hands steady on her back as they stepped into the cool night air. The driver pulled up moments later, and they rode in silence until the car turned off the main road and began climbing into the hills. Sierra looked out the window, frowning. Where are we going? You'll see. After 10 minutes, the car stopped in front of a tall, wrought iron gate. Beyond it was a sprawling estate, all glass and stone, surrounded by trees lit with soft uplighting. Whose house is this? She asked. Zane stepped out and held the door for her. Mine. She stared at him. I thought you lived in that coastal house. I do. That's where Kenzie and I stay. But that property? It's just one of many. This is the one I keep for me. The one no one sees. He led her through the gate and up a winding path to a rooftop terrace. From there, the entire city stretched below them, glittering like a sea of stars. Sierra stepped to the edge, breath-catching. I come here when I need to remember why I'm doing all this, Zane said behind her. Why I'm fighting to keep the people I care about safe. She turned slowly. You brought me here for a reason. Because I wanted you to see the real me. Not the man they gossip about at galas or the one with the tailored suits. Just me. She held his gaze, her voice steady. You don't have to prove anything. Zane took her hands, his voice barely a whisper. I want you in my life, Sierra. Not just in the afternoons or on weekends. I want you beside me. In this world. In every part of it. She searched his eyes, her heart pounding. I don't fit into your world, Zane. Then I'll build a new one around you. He kissed her again. But this time it wasn't desperate or uncertain. It was sure. Steady. Like a promise. And for the first time in her life, Sierra didn't feel like she was on the outside looking in. She felt like she was finally home. The next morning, Sierra woke with the taste of last night still in her chest. Not the champagne or the kiss, but the quiet. The kind of quiet that settles in your bones when someone finally lets you all the way in. By noon, she was back at Zane's coastal house, easing pancakes onto a plate while Kenzie arranged her stuffed animals around the breakfast table. Zane came down in sweats and a faded shirt, hair damp from a shower, but there was something different in the way he looked at her, unhidden, unguarded. Kenzie pointed a syrupy fork at Sierra. You should live here. Zane raised an eyebrow. Is that a formal invitation? I have a blanket for it. And you can have my star's nightlight. Sierra chuckled and ruffled her curls. That's a tempting offer. Zane leaned in as he passed behind her, brushing his hand lightly against her hip. You'd get used to the view. She turned just enough to meet his gaze. You think so? I know so. They spent the day together, all three of them, without any schedule or structure. Kenzie drew pictures of their aquarium trip. Sierra added them to the fridge with mismatched magnets. And Zane read from a storybook in a voice that did all the characters. By late afternoon, Kenzie was dozing in her room and Sierra followed Zane onto the back veranda where the Pacific stretched out in hazy blue. He handed her a glass of iced tea and sat beside her, elbow resting on the back of the bench behind her shoulders. I have to fly to New York next week, he said without preamble. Only for 2 days. A board vote. Sierra turned to him. Do you want me to stay with Kenzie? That's not why I'm telling you. He looked out at the water. I'm telling you because I'm not used to anyone caring where I go. And now I find myself wanting to tell you things. All of them. She studied his profile, the tightness in his jaw. What are you worried about? He hesitated. That I'll go back into that world and forget how this feels. Being with you. Having you here. You won't, she said quietly. You don't get to forget something that finally makes sense. He looked at her then, something fierce and grateful in his face. I want you to be part of this. Not just here when we're playing house. I mean for real. With me. You're asking me to move in. I'm asking you to build something with me. A life. A home. Not just for Kenzie, for us. She exhaled slowly, overwhelmed for a heartbeat, then steady. That's a big shift. I know. No pressure. I just needed you to know what I want. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stood and walked to the edge of the deck, toes just touching the warm wooden rail. He waited. Finally, she turned back to him. I can't promise I'll be perfect at this. I've never done the whole instant family thing. Zane stood and came to her, drawing her hands into his. I'm not asking for perfect. I'm asking for you. She nodded once. Okay. He blinked. Okay. I'll move in. On one condition. Name it. I keep my job at least part-time. I need to hold on to something that's mine. Not because I don't trust you, but because I trust myself too. Zane smiled, the kind that reached all the way to his eyes. Deal. That evening, he told Kenzie during dinner. Guess what, Munchkin, he said, cutting her chicken into smaller pieces. Sierra's going to live with us. Kenzie dropped her fork. Forever. Zane looked to Sierra, who nodded. Forever sounds about right, she said. Kenzie's face lit up in a way Sierra would never forget. 3 days later, Sierra moved in. There was no dramatic packing of boxes, no parade of suitcases. Just a few bags, her favorite coffee mug, and the framed photo of her parents she kept on her nightstand. Zane cleared space in his closet without her asking. Kenzie helped pick the drawer where Sierra would keep her socks. It didn't feel like moving in. It felt like arriving. The night before Zane left for New York, they sat outside again, a blanket draped over their legs, the ocean humming beneath the cliffs. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't answered that job posting? She asked. I would have fired every agency until they sent you anyway. She laughed. You would not. I would have found you. He was quiet for a moment. I think I was waiting for you, even before I knew it. She leaned into him, her voice barely above the breeze. I think I was waiting for this. For someone to see me and not ask me to shrink. He kissed her temple. I want more than that. I want to build you up so high the world has to look up to see you. The next morning he left before dawn. Sierra stood at the window with Kenzie waving as the car disappeared down the hill. She felt the ache of missing him already, but it wasn't the sharp kind. It was the kind that meant something mattered. Zane called every night, not just to check in on Kenzie, but to hear Sierra's voice. He told her about the boardroom tension, the vote that swung because of something he said, how it felt to walk out of that meeting room knowing he'd shifted the direction of the company. It's not just about money anymore, he said. It's about what I'm leaving behind. What are you leaving behind? She asked. A legacy, not just in the company, in our home, with you. He came back on a Thursday. Sierra and Kenzie met him at the airport. Not at the gates, but beside the private hangar, where a sleek jet taxied to a stop. When he stepped off, Kenzie ran to him first. Sierra followed, slower. But when he saw her, his entire face changed. I missed you, he said, pulling her into his arms. She kissed him. Welcome home. Weeks passed, then months. Life settled into a rhythm that felt new but natural. Sierra kept working part-time and Zane supported her without ever trying to change her. Kenzie started preschool full-time and they took turns dropping her off, sometimes together. They had dinners on the patio, movie nights on the couch, lazy Sunday mornings full of pancakes and bare feet. Then one evening, Zane asked Sierra to meet him by the pool after Kenzie went to bed. She found him at the edge of the water, the entire yard lit with soft fairy lights strung through the trees. A fire pit crackled nearby. The air smelled faintly of cedar and salt. He was in a navy suit, no tie, barefoot. She stepped toward him slowly. Is this a surprise date? Something like that. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Opened it. The ring inside caught the light like it had been waiting for this moment. I don't want to wait anymore, he said. Not another day. Not another hour. I want to be yours. Officially. Forever. Her breath caught. I know we didn't meet in the usual way. I know we came together through a job posting and a little girl who changed everything. But I've built empires. I've built skyscrapers. None of that means anything unless you're standing beside me. Sierra's eyes filled with tears. You're really proposing? I'm really proposing. She stared at him, then down at the ring, then back again. Yes, she said, voice shaking. Yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and then they were kissing, laughing, holding each other like the world had just opened up and poured gold at their feet. From the window upstairs, Kenzie watched with wide eyes and a grin. Later, Zane carried Sierra inside, barefoot and grinning, and said the words she'd never forget. You didn't just change my life. You made me want to live it. And Sierra finally understood what it meant to be chosen not for convenience, or comfort, or timing, but for love. Real, forever, no matter what love. The wedding took place under a canopy of wisteria in a private garden tucked behind the main house. The ocean breeze threading through the silk ribbons tied to the chairs. It wasn't a lavish affair, not by the standards Zane's world was used to, but it was exactly what Sierra wanted. Intimate, grounded, and overflowing with meaning. Kenzie had insisted on wearing a flower crown and carried a basket of white rose petals she took very seriously. She walked ahead of Sierra with careful steps before turning to whisper loudly, "You look like a princess." Sierra laughed, her hand tightening around her bouquet. The dress was simple, off-the-shoulder ivory with a trailing hem that brushed the grass. Her hair was swept to one side, pinned with tiny pearls. She'd done her makeup herself, refusing the stylist Zane had offered, wanting to feel like herself, not a polished version of someone else. Zane stood at the end of the aisle, hands clasped in front of him, eyes locked on her with a look that made everything around them disappear. I thought I was prepared, he said the moment she reached him, voice low enough only she could hear. But nothing could have prepared me for you in that dress. The officiant smiled but didn't interrupt. I didn't need a fairy tale, Sierra whispered back. But I'm starting to think I got one anyway. The ceremony was short. There were no dramatic declarations or rehearsed lines. Just two people who had found each other in a world that made love feel like a luxury, vowing to never let go of what they built. When Zane slid the ring on her finger, this time in front of their closest friends, his sister and Kenzie, who clapped a second too early, Sierra felt something settle in her chest. Not butterflies. Not fireworks. Just certainty. They kissed and the garden erupted in applause. Kenzie ran to them immediately, arms thrown around both their legs. "I'm not the flower girl anymore," she declared. "I'm the family girl now." The reception was held on the same lawn, strung with paper lanterns and long wooden tables lined with wildflowers. A jazz trio played softly in the corner, and Sierra's former co-workers mingled with Zane's board members, the usual tension between their worlds softened by laughter and champagne. Zane tapped a spoon against his glass and stood, holding his wine. "I've spent years building towers," he began. "Buying land, closing deals, chasing numbers that never meant anything once I got them. I thought I was doing it for security. For legacy. For Kenzie. But what I didn't realize was that none of it mattered until I found the person I wanted to come home to. Sierra didn't just walk into my life. She anchored it." Sierra's eyes stung, but she didn't look away. "I didn't know what home felt like until she made it for us. And I promise every day, for the rest of my life, I'll make sure she never forgets how much she changed mine." Kenzie tugged on Sierra's arm. "Can I toast too?" Sierra nodded, laughing through her tears. "Go ahead, baby." Kenzie stood on her chair, lifted her ginger ale and shouted, "To love and pancakes. And no more babysitters ever." The laughter that followed carried long into the night, echoing over the cliffs and into the sea. Months passed. They traveled to Italy that summer, just the three of them. Zane surprised Sierra with a villa in Tuscany. Not bought but rented. Because, as he explained while serving her espresso on a sun-dappled terrace, "I don't want to own everything. I just want to live in it with you." Sierra launched a nonprofit shortly after they returned, an after-school arts program for low-income families. Zane didn't fund it entirely, though he offered. Instead, she reached out to community leaders, wrote grants, and built it from the ground up. Zane stood beside her at the ribbon cutting but stayed out of the press photos. She wanted it to be hers, and he respected that. Kenzie started kindergarten, proudly announcing to her teacher that her parents were married now and that her mom made the best grilled cheese, with the corners cut off like love triangles. One autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and turned the sky molten orange, Zane and Sierra stood barefoot in their backyard. Kenzie was inside, painting something with glitter and glue, her music floating faintly through the windows. Zane wrapped his arms around Sierra from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Do you still feel like you're wearing someone else's shoes?" "No," she murmured. "Now I feel like I built my own. And they fit just right." He kissed the curve of her neck. "Maybe I'll build a tower in your honor. Only if you let me decorate the lobby." They laughed, and the sound was real, solid, the kind that only comes from two people who've learned each other's cracks and decided to love deeper because of them. Zane no longer needed to pretend to be someone else. He was still powerful, still wealthy, but now when he walked into a boardroom he carried Sierra's grounding presence in him. And when he came home he didn't step into marble and silence, he stepped into warmth and life. Sierra no longer questioned whether she belonged. She chose every day to be here, not because she needed to be rescued, but because she'd found someone who wanted to build something with her, not for her. They had arguments, of course. About bedtime routines, about work schedules, about whether Kenzie could adopt a pet rabbit. But they never went to bed angry. They never walked away. One rainy Sunday, while Kenzie napped on the couch beneath a blanket of stuffed animals, Sierra sat beside Zane on the floor of their sunroom, her head resting on his chest. "Do you think we'll ever slow down?" she asked. He brushed her hair back, thumb tracing the edge of her jaw. "Only if you want to." "I don't," she said. "I want all of it. The chaos. The calm. Everything. Then that's what we'll have." They stayed like that, tangled up in each other, while the rain tapped gently against the glass. And for the first time in both their lives, neither of them was waiting for the other shoe to drop. There were no more secrets. No more masks. No more pretending. Just the quiet, undeniable truth of two people who had built their forever together.